The alpha of Cresthold Pack stood at the altar with the wrong woman. Every wolf in the great hall felt it. Not as a thought, not as an opinion, as a biological fact. Something moving through the pack bond like a current through water, a wrongness so deep that even the pups in the back of the hall shifted in their seats and looked around, confused by what they were feeling but unable to name it. Because the mate bond was the moon goddess's language. And the moon goddess was speaking. She was speaking in the specific, mounting pressure of a supernatural force being deliberately ignored, the way static built before lightning, the way silence built before an earthquake. Every wolf present could feel it, whether they acknowledged it or not. Every wolf except Brenvale. He stood at the altar with Petra Koss, his childhood sweetheart, the girl he had loved since he was 9 years old, the girl the moon goddess had not chosen for him. And his face was composed and determined and entirely directed at Petra, who was radiant in the way people were radiant when they had won something they had wanted very much. And on the third row from the front, in the seat closest to the aisle, sat Marakal, his true mate, wearing the best dress she owned, watching the man the moon goddess had given her marry someone else. She had come because she had told herself she could bear it. She had been wrong, but she was not going to let anyone see that. She sat in her seat with her spine perfectly straight and her face arranged in the careful composure of someone who had decided that if the world was going to take something from her, it was not also going to take her dignity. 3 rows away, she could feel the bond pulling toward him the way a tide pulled toward the shore. He could feel it too. She knew he could feel it. He was choosing not to. And the moon goddess. The moon goddess was watching. If you've ever watched someone choose the comfortable over the destined, you need to stay with this story. Because what the moon goddess did next was something no wolf had seen in a generation. Like the video, hit that subscribe button right now and drop in the comments where you are watching from. This story is about to become something you were not ready for. Let's begin. Her name was Marakal. She was 23 years old, a pack librarian and history specialist for Cresthold Pack, and she had known about the bond for 8 months before the wedding. 8 months of carrying it. 8 months of knowing, with the specific, absolute certainty that only the mate bond produced, that the alpha of her pack was the person the moon goddess had designated for her. And 8 months of watching Brenvale very carefully choose not to know the same thing. She had understood, from the moment the bond arrived, why it was complicated. Brenvale had loved Petra Koss since they were 9 years old. That was not a small thing. That was not the kind of love that was simply replaced by biology. Bren and Petra had grown up together in the western quarter of Cresthold. 2 children from the same generation of pack families, the same street, the same communal school, the same adolescent summers. Petra's parents and Bren's parents had been friends. There was a history between them that was decades deep and densely personal, the kind of history that wove itself into the fabric of who you understood yourself to be. Bren had become alpha at 28, following his uncle's retirement from the position with the specific, organized succession of a pack that had planned the transition for years. He had come to the role with the seriousness and capability that Cresthold's wolves had expected from him, and which he had delivered fully. And from the first day of his alpha tenure, he had been moving toward formalizing his relationship with Petra, not because the council required it, because he wanted to. Because for Brenvale, Petra Koss was the shape of home, the specific, particular home of someone who had known you since you were 9, and who was woven into every good memory of your life. The bond had arrived 6 months into his alpha tenure, in the pack's history library, where Mara worked. He had come in for a governance reference review, a routine process, the kind of administrative task that brought the alpha to the library once a month. They had spoken before, professionally, as librarian and patron. There had been nothing unusual about the interaction, until his hand had reached for the document she was holding at the same moment. Their fingers had touched, and the bond had arrived. She had felt it. He had felt it. He had withdrawn his hand immediately, not slowly, not with the suspension of a man encountering something he was not sure how to receive. He had withdrawn his hand as if the document had burned him, and then he had looked at her. One full, direct, unmanaged look. The look of a man registering something enormous. And then the management had descended. "Thank you for the reference," he had said. Official, professional, gone. She had spent 3 days trying to understand what had happened. Not the bond. She understood the bond. She was the pack librarian and history specialist. She had read every documented account of the mate bond's arrival that Cresthold's archive contained. She understood the biology, the history, the specific, irreversible nature of what it was and what it meant. What she had spent 3 days trying to understand was the withdrawal, the immediate, deliberate, decisive withdrawal. On the fourth day, Asta Vane, who ran the pack's post office and who was Mara's closest friend in Cresthold, who had the specific, total situational awareness of a person who had been in a community her whole life and noticed everything. Asta came to the library. She did not bring anything. She just came. She sat across from Mara at the small work table where Mara ate her lunch on days when she was too absorbed in the cataloging to walk to the communal hall. She looked at Mara. When Asta asked, Mara looked at her. "For days ago," she said. "The library." Asta was very still. "He felt it," Mara said. "I know," Asta said. "He's choosing not to." "Yes," Asta said. Mara looked at the document she was cataloging. "Petra," she said. "Yes," Asta said again. They sat in silence for a moment. "What do I do?" Mara asked. It was the quietest question she had ever asked. Asta was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," she said. "But I know what you don't do." "What?" "You don't disappear," Asta said. "You don't make yourself smaller. You don't act like the bond didn't arrive because he has decided it didn't arrive." Mara looked at her. "The bond is real," Asta said. "It is documented and biological, and it is the moon goddess's work. Whatever he chooses, the bond is real. And you are real. And those things do not stop being true because he is inconvenienced by them." Mara sat with that. "He's going to marry her," she said. "Maybe," Asta said. "He loves her." "Yes," Asta said. "He does." "And the bond?" "The bond designates," Asta said carefully. "What wolves do with the designation is their choice. Always has been." Mara looked at the document again. "Then he's choosing her," she said. "Yes," Asta said. "He is choosing her. And I are going to keep working," Asta said. "And keep being exactly who you are. And let whatever happens next happen at the pace it needs." Mara looked at her. "That's not very satisfying," she said. "No," Asta said. "Real advice rarely is." The 8 months between the library and the wedding were the 8 months that made Mara call who she was. This was not dramatic growth in the storytelling sense. There was no moment of radical transformation, no single revelation that rewrote her understanding of herself. What happened in those 8 months was quieter and more durable than transformation. What happened was, she continued. She continued the library work with the specific thoroughness of someone who had always found the work meaningful and found it more meaningful now, perhaps, because the work was reliably honest in a way that the rest of her life currently was not. Documents meant what they said. History had happened. The records of the pack's 300 years of decisions and consequences and survival told a story that was true regardless of what any individual wolf decided in any individual moment. She found comfort in that. She also found, in those 8 months, something she had not expected. She found Cresthold, not as a concept. She had lived there for 5 years and had thought she knew it. But the 8 months of carrying the bond quietly, of being present in the community while managing something significant and private, had produced an intimacy with the pack that pure professional engagement had not. She knew the old wolves who came to the library to read in the mornings because it was warm and they were lonely. She knew the names of the children who came after school to look at the historical maps, which had always been, for children, the most popular section of the collection because maps made the world feel containable. She knew the pack's grief and its humor and its long-standing disputes about fence line maintenance. She became part of Cresthold in a way that had not previously been possible for a wolf who had not been born there. She belonged, and on the morning of Bryn's wedding to Petrikos, she put on her best dress and she went. Not because she was a masochist, because she was the pack librarian, and the Alpha's wedding was a pack event, and she was a member of this pack. She was not going to absent herself from her own community because the Alpha was making a choice she disagreed with. She sat in the third row. She kept her spine straight. She let the bond pull toward him the way a tide pulled toward shore. And she felt, in the air of the great hall, the thing that every wolf present was feeling without naming. The moon goddess was watching, and she was not pleased. The signs began the next morning. Not dramatic signs. Not the theatrical interventions of a supernatural force making a point in the most visible possible way. The moon goddess, as the old texts documented in Mara's archive, did not work dramatically. She worked in the specific, sustained pressure of natural consequences. The first sign was the bond, not severed. Neither party had used the formal rejection words. But the bond between Bryn and Mara, which had been warm and pulling and present for 8 months, began to do something she had no precedent for and had to research carefully to understand. It began to activate, not deepen exactly, but intensify in the way of something that had been patient and was no longer being patient. The warmth of it became a pressure. The directional pull of it became more specific, more insistent, like a signal that had been broadcasting at low volume and had just been turned up. She felt it every morning. She felt it in the library. She felt it in the evenings in her small cottage on the pack's eastern side. She researched it. The historical records in Cresthold's archive contained 3 documented cases of a recognized mate bond being deliberately overridden by the bonded Alpha. 3 cases in 300 years. She read all 3. The first case had ended with the Alpha's chosen partner leaving within a year, not because of anything the true mate had done, but because the pack bond's ambient wrongness had become intolerable. The pack felt it. They could not name it, but they felt it. The specific dissonance of a governance structure built on a foundation that the moon goddess had not sanctioned. The second case had ended with illness. Not supernatural illness. Ordinary illness, the kind that happened to wolves who were under sustained biological stress. The stress of carrying a severed bond that the moon goddess had not severed. The stress of the body knowing that something fundamental was wrong. The third case was the most significant. The third case had ended with the bond completing itself. Not because the Alpha had chosen differently. Because the moon goddess had acted. Mara had read the third case 3 times. She had then filed it in the most accessible section of the active research reference, because it was going to be relevant. She could feel it becoming relevant. The second sign came 6 weeks after the wedding. The pack's eastern boundary, the section that had been stable and unchallenged for 15 years, suddenly, without warning, became the site of 3 separate territorial incursions from the pack to the east. Not significant incursions, minor boundary violations, the kind that happened occasionally and were usually resolved through the routine diplomatic channels that packs maintained for exactly this purpose. But 3 and 6 weeks was unusual. And the timing, Mara noted this with the archivist's attention to correlation, corresponded exactly with the period in which Bryn's wedding had taken place. She did not raise this as a formal observation. She filed it in her personal research notes. She continued working. She also began to notice what was happening to Bryn. Not personally. She was not in a position to observe him personally, but professionally, through the governance documents that came through the library's reference system, through the meeting minutes that were archived, through the indirect, comprehensive picture that a librarian developed of a pack's leadership when they were responsible for the records. He was not sleeping. The medical facility logs, which the library received as part of the wellness documentation that integrated into the historical record, showed 3 consultations with the head healer in the first 2 months after the wedding. The consultation notes used the carefully neutral language of medical documentation that was designed not to reveal specifics, but the frequency and the pattern were clear to someone who knew what she was looking at. The bond was not letting him rest. Not because of anything Mara was doing, because the bond was what it was. And what the bond was the moon goddess's design. And the moon goddess did not accept being overridden without consequence. Petra came to the library in the 3rd month. Not for a book. She sat across from Mara at the same work table where Asta had sat, in the same chair, with a very different quality of expression. Mara had known this was coming, not through the bond. The bond gave her Bryn's direction, not his wife's intentions. Through the simple, social intelligence of someone who had been watching a situation develop from the inside for 11 months. "You know why I'm here," Petrus said. "I think so," Mara said. "The bond," Petrus said. Mara was quiet. "He told me," Petrus said. "Not immediately. 2 months after the wedding." Mara absorbed this. "He told you," she said. "He had to," Petrus said. It was affecting him. And he is not a man who manages things through concealment. Eventually, he needed to tell me. "What did he tell you?" Mara asked. "That the bond arrived 8 months before the wedding," Petrus said. "That it arrived in this library. That he recognized it and made a decision about it." A pause. "He told me that the decision was his and that he believed it was the right one." Mara looked at her. "And what do you believe?" she asked. Petra was quiet for a long moment. Mara was honest with herself about this. She was genuinely beautiful. Not in the performed sense. In the specific, real sense of someone whose appearance was the least interesting thing about them, but who happened to have it as well. She was sharp and composed and had the specific quality of someone who had known, from a very young age, exactly what she wanted and had spent her whole life being competent about getting it. She had gotten Bryn. And now she was sitting in the library of the mate the moon goddess had given him, asking questions that required courage that Mara had not expected. "I believe," Petrus said slowly, "that he chose me because I am what he knows, and that the thing he knows and the thing the moon goddess decided are different. And that living inside that difference is," she stopped. "Difficult," Mara said. "Yes," Petrus said. Mara looked at her. "I am not trying to take him from you," Mara said. "I know," Petrus said. "I have not done anything to." "I know that too," Petrus said. "I know you, Mara. Not personally. But I know what the pack says about you. I know what you are." A pause. "I know you came to the wedding. I know what that cost you. And I know you sat in the 3rd row with your spine straight, and you didn't make a scene, and you went home, and you came back to work the next day." Mara was very still. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Because," Petrus said carefully, "I need to understand what happens if things continue as they are." Mara thought about the historical records. About 3 cases in 300 years. About what the moon goddess did when she was deliberately, persistently ignored. She made a decision. "Can I show you something?" she asked. Petra looked at her. "Yes," she said. Mara showed her the 3rd case. She pulled the document from the active research section, the one she had filed in the most accessible location because it was going to be relevant. She laid it on the work table between them, and she walked Petra through it with the calm, precise explanation of a librarian presenting research. Not to frighten her, to inform her. Because Petra had come to the library asking questions that required honest answers, and dishonest comfort was not something Mara had in stock. The 3rd case was 200 years old. An alpha of a northern pack, named documented as Aldrich III, who had chosen his childhood love over the mate bond with a she-wolf from the pack's eastern quarter. The story in the archive was not dramatic. It was documented in the specific, careful language of a pack historian who was recording events as they occurred rather than shaping them into narrative. What had happened was, the bond had not been severed. Neither party had used the formal words. But the alpha had married someone else, and the pack had begun, gradually, over 8 months, to exhibit symptoms. Not supernatural symptoms, natural ones. The pack bond, which was the ambient connection that held the community together, had begun to weaken. Not collapse, weaken, like a fabric losing threads. Nothing dramatic. A slight fraying. Disputes that would normally have resolved through the pack's existing mechanisms required more effort. Wolves who had been comfortable in the community began to feel a vague, unnamed unease. The specific warmth of belonging, the thing that made a pack different from a collection of individuals sharing territory, that warmth had cooled. And then, in the 10th month, the Alpha's chosen wife had left. Not because of anything the true mate had done, because the specific wrongness that she had been living inside had become, finally, unbearable. Because carrying a bond that the moon goddess had not given her and living beside a bond the moon goddess had given her mate, in the same community, had produced a pressure she could not sustain. She had left with the specific, composed dignity of someone who had made peace with a situation that had never been hers to win. And the Alpha had fallen ill. The illness in the record was documented carefully. Not supernatural illness, the historian had noted, but the kind of sustained biological deterioration that occurred in a wolf who was carrying a severed bond. The body registering the wrongness of what had been done and expressing it in the only language bodies had. He had recovered. The recovery had coincided with the third and most significant event of the case. The moon goddess had appeared. Not physically, not in the way of myths. In the way she appeared in documented cases, through the bond itself. Through the bond completing, without the Alpha's formal acknowledgement, in a way that superseded the choice he had made. The pack historian had documented this with the careful precision of someone who was recording something they had no framework for and were not going to embellish. On the night of the last moon of autumn, the Alpha reported a change in the bond's nature that was without precedent. He described it as the bond recognizing itself fully, in both directions, regardless of his prior choice. The mate bond completed. The formal ceremony was unnecessary. The moon goddess had determined that the bond would be honored. The pack bond strengthened immediately and noticeably. The record has been preserved as evidence of the moon goddess's authority over the mate bond, which supersedes the authority of pack governance, Alpha designation, and personal choice. Mara finished presenting the document. Petra was very still. She was looking at the record. Then she looked at Mara. "You've had this for months," she said. "Yes," Mara said. "You've known what it meant for months." "Yes," Mara said. "And you didn't." Petra stopped. "It wasn't mine to tell," Mara said. "The information is the pack's record. It's available to anyone who looks for it. No one asked me to look for it. And I was not going to use the historical record to make an argument for my own position." Petra looked at her. "You are a very unusual person," she said. "I am a librarian," Mara said. "We don't editorialize." Something moved through Petra's face. Not the expression Mara had expected. Not anger. Not competitive fury. Not the specific, defensive certainty of someone who had won something and was protecting the win. Something much more complicated. The expression of a woman who had come to a library to find information and had found information that was going to cost her something she had not yet calculated. "I need time," Petra said. "Yes," Mara said. "To think about this." "Yes," Mara said. Petra stood up. She looked at the document for one more moment. Then she walked out of the library. The 4th month was when the pack felt it. Not in a single event. In the accumulation of small things that the pack's collective intelligence registered without naming. The third boundary incursion had not been resolved through the normal diplomatic channels. It had required Bren to travel to the Eastern Pax Alpha for a direct conversation, an unusual step for what should have been a routine matter. The conversation had resolved the immediate issue, but the underlying tension had not fully eased. 2 senior pack members had formal disputes that went to the council in the same week. This was not unprecedented, but 2 in 1 week was unusual, and the quality of the disputes was unusual. They were not about substantive issues. They were about nothing specific. They were about the ambient friction of a community that was not quite as settled as it had been. The head healer, a quietly observant wolf named Croft who had been practicing in Cresthold for 25 years, began keeping a private record. Not officially, personally, because what he was observing was not anything he could present to the council as a medical concern. It was too diffuse, too ambient, but he was observing it. And in the 5th month, he came to the library. He sat across from Mara at the work table. "The third case," he said. She looked at him. "I need to see the third case," he said. "You know about it?" she asked. "I know about all 3 cases," he said. "I trained in the old wolf medicine tradition before I joined the modern practice. My mentor told me about the historical precedents for what happened when an alpha bond was deliberately overridden." Mara went to the reference section. She pulled the document. She placed it on the table. Croft read it in silence. When he finished, he looked up. "The pact bond weakening," he said. "The timeline in the record." "Yes," Mara said. "It matches," he said, "what I'm seeing in the community. It matches the 8th month of the 3rd case." "We're in the 5th month," she said. "Yes," he said, "which means if the timeline holds, we have 3 months before the pact bond deteriorates significantly. And before the moon goddess makes her determination," he said. They looked at each other. "Does the alpha know?" he asked. "About the 3rd case?" "I don't know," she said. "Petra knows. She came to the library." Croft absorbed this. "She knows," he said. "She came and asked me to show her what the historical records said," Mara said. "I showed her." "And what is she going to do with that?" he asked. Mara looked at the document. "I don't know," she said. "She said she needed time." "She has 3 months," he said. "We all do," Mara said. Petra came back in the 6th month. Not to the library, to Mara's cottage. At 9 in the evening. She stood on the doorstep with the specific quality of someone who had spent a month preparing what she was going to say and had arrived at the moment of saying it. Mara opened the door. They looked at each other. "Can I come in?" Petra asked. "Yes," Mara said. She made tea. They sat at the small kitchen table. Petra had her hands wrapped around the cup. She looked at the table. Then she looked up. "I spoke to Bren," she said. Mara was very still. "I showed him the 3rd case," Petra said. "I had a copy made in the library on the day I came." Mara absorbed this. "And?" she asked. "He read it," Petra said. "He was quiet for a long time. And then he said," she stopped. "He said he knew. He knew about the 3rd case?" "He knew the pact bond was weakening," Petra said. "He has been feeling it. As Alpha, he feels it more directly than anyone. He said it had been feeling wrong since," she stopped again, "since the morning after the wedding." Mara was quiet. "He also said," Petra continued, carefully, "that he was not going to change what he had chosen." The specific quality of that sentence. Mara sat with it. "He's committed," she said. "He is committed," Petra said. "To me. To what we have. To the history of us." A pause. "He said that the moon goddess's bond was biological and real, but that the love he had for me was also real, and that he was not willing to," she stopped. "To choose one real thing over another," Mara said. "Yes," Petra said. Mara looked at her tea. "And what do you think?" she asked. "I think," Petra said slowly, "that he is choosing me because he loves me. And I think that is genuine. And I also think that the thing he is not accounting for is the pack." Mara looked up. "He is making a choice that is costing him personally," Petra said. "He can manage a personal cost. He is strong enough. But the pack," she looked at the table. "The pack did not choose this. The wolves who are experiencing the ambient fraying of the bond, they did not make this decision. They are paying a cost they did not incur." Mara was very still. "Petra," she said. "Yes." "What are you telling me?" Petra wrapped her hands tighter around her tea. "I am telling you," she said quietly, "that I have spent a month thinking about what I want and what the pack needs. And I have arrived at a place where those 2 things are not the same." "No," Mara said. "He won't choose differently," Petra said. "I know him. He is committed." He will hold the commitment until the moon goddess's determination comes, and even then he will argue with it. Yes, Mara said. That sounds like him. But I don't have to commit on the same terms, Petrus said. Mara was quiet. Tell me what you mean, she said. I mean, Petrus said, that I can make a choice he will not make. Not because I love him less, but because, she stopped, because my love for him includes this pack. And this pack is suffering. And the moon goddess is going to make her determination in 3 months. And when she does, I want to have. She stopped again. Her voice, the specific, pressurized quality of someone who was saying something that was costing them everything. I want to have not made the pack pay for the choice he made, she said. And the only way to do that is for you to step back, Mara said. Yes, Petrus said. The kitchen was very quiet. Mara looked at this woman, at Petra Koss, who had been Bryn Vale's childhood sweetheart, who had grown up on the same street, who had known him since they were 9, who had the specific, earned love of someone who had been someone's person through all the ordinary years before the extraordinary ones, who had come to a library to understand what was happening, who had gone home and thought for a month, who was now sitting in her rival's kitchen, choosing the pack over herself. You don't have to do this, Mara said. I know, Petrus said. That's what makes it the right thing. The conversation that Petra had with Bryn the following morning was one that neither of them would ever describe to another person in full. Mara knew it happened because the bond changed. She felt it in the library at 11 in the morning. A shift in the specific quality of what connected her to the southwest corner of the pack, where the Alpha's compound was. Not the bond arriving, not the bond completing, but the bond's pressure changing, easing, like a sound that had been building toward a note reaching it. She sat very still in the library for a moment. She thought, something has changed. She thought, Petra has spoken. She went back to cataloging. At 3 in the afternoon, Bryn Vale came to the library. She knew he was coming before she heard the door. He stood in the doorway. She looked up. He looked at her. And this time he did not manage the look. He held it. He crossed the library floor, and he sat down in the chair across from her, the chair that Asta had used and Petra had used and Croft had used, and he put his hands on the table, and he looked at them. She told you what she was going to do, he said. Yes, Mara said. I tried to. I know, she said. She wouldn't hear it, he said. No, she said. She's a person who decides things and then means them. He looked up. She said that's why she loved me, he said. That it's also what she loved about me. Mara looked at him. The Alpha of Cresthold Pack, 31 years old, dark-eyed in the specific way of someone whose eyes had seen enough that they had settled into a particular depth. The quality of his stillness that she had always been able to read. The stillness of someone managing a great deal and not letting the management show. He was not managing right now. He was just there. I made the wrong choice, he said. Not performing remorse. Stating a fact. Yes, she said. I knew the bond was real, he said. I knew what it meant. And I chose. The thing you already had, she said, rather than the thing you were being given. Yes, he said. I understand that, she said. I want you to know that I understand it. He looked at her. Why does that matter to you, he said. Understanding why I made the choice that hurt you. Because the choice is not the whole of who you are, she said. And whoever you are is relevant to whatever comes next. He was very still. The pack bond, he said. Croft came to see me, she said. 6 weeks ago. We are in the 5th month of the 3rd case's timeline. He closed his eyes. I know, he said. You have been feeling it, she said. Since the morning after the wedding, he said. I have been feeling it since the morning after the wedding. Like something fundamental had been, not broken, bent, held in a position it was not supposed to be in. Yes, she said. He opened his eyes. I did this, he said. Yes, she said. To the pack. Yes, she said. The wolves in this community did not choose this. They are experiencing the cost of a choice they were not part of. He looked at the table. What do I do, he asked. Not the Alpha asking an administrative question. The person asking the fundamental one. She looked at him. I think, she said carefully, that what you do is not up to me. I am not going to tell you what to choose. I told you that from the beginning. You never told me anything, he said. You sat in the third row at my wedding with your spine straight, and you didn't say a word. No, she said. I didn't. Why? Because the choice had to be yours, she said. Completely yours. Without pressure from me. Without me using the bond as leverage or the pack as an argument. If you were ever going to choose differently, if you were ever going to look at this clearly, it had to be because you arrived there yourself. He looked at her for a long time. And now, he said. Now Petra has made her choice, she said. And Croft has shared his observations. And the historical record is the historical record. And you are sitting in this library. A pause. And whatever you decide next is still yours to decide. He was quiet. The library was very quiet. Outside, through the high windows, the afternoon light was doing its specific thing with the dust motes. The thing that made libraries feel like time moved differently in them. Like the accumulated wisdom of everything preserved there created its own kind of gravity. I want to start, he said. Start what? She asked. The beginning, he said. Whatever this is. Whatever it would have been if I had. I want to start from here. She looked at him. That is a very slow beginning, she said. I know, he said. It is going to take time, she said. And I am not going to pretend the 8 months didn't happen or the wedding didn't happen or what Petra chose to give up didn't happen. I know that too, he said. And the pact bond, she said. What comes first is the pact bond. Not us. The pact. Yes, he said. The bond completing, the moon goddess's determination, that will happen in its own time, she said. What matters now is the governance. The pack. The wolves who have been paying a cost. Yes, he said. He stood up. He looked at her. Tomorrow, he said. Can I come back tomorrow? She looked at him. The library opens at 9, she said. The bond completed on a night in late November. Not dramatically. The moon goddess, as Mara had long since understood, did not work dramatically. She worked in the patient, sustained, inevitable way of natural processes. Mara was in the library after hours, cataloging a collection of old letters from the Pact's founding period, when she felt it arrive. Not the dramatic lightning strike of the stories. The specific, complete arrival of something that had been building toward completion for a very long time, and had simply reached the moment when completion was the only remaining option. Like a lock that had been waiting for its key. Like a frequency finding its exact resonance. Like the sky before snow. She put down the letter she was cataloging. She sat very still for a moment. She felt the bond settle, fully, deeply, completely, in the specific way that the third case had documented, without formal ceremony, without the alpha's deliberate choice, in the way that superseded individual decision. The moon goddess had determined. She heard footsteps on the library's front path. She had known they were coming. He came through the door. He stood inside the entrance. He looked at her. The look from the library 8 months ago, the full, direct, unmanaged look, the look of a man recognizing something enormous. That look again. But without the withdrawal this time. Without the management descending. Just the look. You felt it, he said. Yes, she said. He crossed the library. He sat down in the chair. He put his hands on the table. She put her hands beside his. They did not touch immediately. They sat in the library with the completed bond between them, warm and full and real, and the old letters of the Pact's founders around them, and the November night doing its quiet thing outside the high windows. I should have sat in the third row, he said. She looked at him. At your own wedding, she said. At your life, he said. I should have sat in the front row of your life from the beginning. She looked at him. You're here now, she said. Yes, he said. That is what matters, she said. He looked at her. The moon goddess. Determined, she said. Yes. I would have chosen, he said. I want you to know that. Not because I was forced to. I would have chosen. I was almost there. Almost, she said. Yes, he said. The almost was taking too long, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at the old letters. I've been reading the founder's correspondence, she said. The Alpha and his mate. They argued about the fence line maintenance in the pack's first decade. He looked at her. They are going to argue about the fence line maintenance, he said. Probably, she said. And the morning rounds, he said. What morning rounds, she said. Whatever rounds you do, he said. Whatever your mornings are. I want to know. She looked at him. She thought about 9 years old. She thought about the Bond arriving in a library over a document. She thought about a wedding in a great hall and a woman with her spine straight. She thought about Petra sitting across from her in a kitchen at 9 in the evening, choosing the pack over herself. She thought about accountability, about the difference between a choice made and a choice earned, about the specific, slow work of building something on the truth rather than on the comfortable. The morning rounds start at 8, she said. When the library opens. He almost smiled. I'll be here at 7:55, he said. You will be here at 9, she said. Because I open at 8 and I need an hour without the Alpha in my library before the day starts. He did smile then. Real. Unmanaged. The specific smile of a man who had just been told something true by someone who was not going to edit the truth for his comfort. 9, he said. 9, she said. The pack bond strengthened within 2 weeks. Not all at once. The way things that had been weakening for months returned, gradually, thread by thread, the fabric reweaving. Croft documented it. He noted, in his private record that eventually became part of the pack's medical archive, that the strengthening corresponded exactly with the completion of the bond and with what he described carefully as the alignment of the pack's governance foundation with the moon goddess's designation. The eastern boundary disputes resolved without escalation. The community friction that had been present for 6 months eased. The old wolves who came to the library in the mornings began to stay longer. The children who came after school began to bring their friends. Mara documented all of it. She was the librarian. She documented things. Petra Kost left Cresthold in December. Not bitterly, not dramatically, with the specific, composed dignity that had always been her characteristic quality and which she carried with her when she left. She went to the Northern Territories. She had family there. She sent Mara a letter 6 months after leaving. Not a long letter. A careful one. She wrote, I want you to know that I am well, that the choice I made was mine, and I do not regret the making of it. I regret what it cost. I do not regret the making. There is a difference, and I think you understand it. The pack is what it should be. I can feel it even from this distance, through the ambient of the southern connection I still have. It is what it was before. That matters. I loved him. I want to be honest about that, because dishonesty about it would be a small form of the same thing he was guilty of, choosing the comfortable truth over the full one. I loved him, and the love I had for him included this pack. And the pack needed what it needed. And so I chose. Take care of him. He is a better man than the choice he made. Most people are better than their worst choices. Give him the chance to be. Mara read the letter 3 times. She filed it in the archive, in the most accessible section, because it was evidence of the specific kind of courage that did not get documented in official records, but that shaped packs as much as any governance decision. There is something the oldest wolf traditions said about the moon goddess and the mate bond. Not the modern version. The modern version was the compressed one, the practical one, the one that described the bond in terms of biology and governance and the formal acknowledgement ceremony. The oldest tradition was more honest. The oldest tradition said, the moon goddess did not give the bond to make things easier. She gave it to make them true. And when the true thing was avoided, when wolves chose the comfortable over the destined, she did not intervene immediately. She was patient. She was the moon. She understood cycles. She understood that wolves needed time to arrive at truth, and she gave them that time. But she did not give them indefinite time. And when the time ran out, she did not punish with fire or flood or the dramatic interventions of a force that needed to make a point. She simply let the truth complete itself. The bond completed. The pack recovered. The Alpha sat in the library at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the librarian opened the door. What Bryn Vale learned, in the year that followed, was something that the historical record documented in all three of its precedent cases, but which he had needed to understand from the inside. The mate bond was not a replacement for the love that already existed. It was a completion. Petra had been real. The love had been real. The history and the childhood and the 22 years of knowing each other. All of that was real. And the bond was also real. Not instead of the first thing. Alongside it. In the way that real things coexisted in a life rather than replacing each other. He had thought he had to choose. He had not had to choose. He had had to hold both things, the love that had come from history and the love that had come from designation, and find the way that both were true simultaneously. He had not known how to do that. He had learned. It had cost. Not only him. Petra. The pack. Mara. Everyone in the radius of the choice. The cost was real. And he carried it. Not as penance. Carrying something as penance was its own form of self-indulgence, the conversion of guilt into a posture. He carried it as information, as evidence of what happened when you chose the comfortable over the true, as the reason he spent the rest of his alpha tenure making choices that were true rather than comfortable, even when the true choice was harder. Especially when the true choice was harder. Mara, for her part, learned something different. She had always known that the right thing was not always the recognized thing. She had been sitting in third rows her whole life, present, dignified, doing the work, carrying things quietly while the world organized itself around more visible people in more visible positions. What the year had taught her was that the third row was a choice, not a destiny, not a punishment, a choice she was making every time, out of the specific, practiced instinct toward invisibility that had become so habitual she no longer noticed she was making it. The bond had not changed that, but it had made it visible. And once visible, it was something she could choose differently. She did not leave the library. She loved the library. The library was hers in a way that nothing else was. The accumulated record of everything the pack had thought worth preserving, the history and the letters and the governance documents, and the old cases that documented what the moon goddess did when she was ignored. But she stopped sitting in the third row. She sat in the front. Not because the front was better, because it was where she was. And being where you were was not a small thing. If you stayed with Mara from the third row at a wedding she should not have attended, through 8 months of carrying something quietly, through the library and the letters and the slow, honest building of something that deserved to be built, then you already know what this story was about. It was about the moon goddess, but not the version where she arrives with fire and judgment and the dramatic machinery of supernatural power making a point. The version where she simply waits. Waits for wolves to find their way to the truth on their own. And when the waiting runs out, completes what was always going to be completed. She doesn't punish with thunder. She punishes with consequence. With the specific, patient, inevitable weight of a world that will not indefinitely accommodate a lie. Bryn Vale chose the comfortable. The moon goddess let him, for exactly as long as the pack could bear it. And then she did what she always did. She made the true thing true. This channel is here every week for everyone who has ever sat in the third row, who has ever carried something quietly that deserved to be carried loudly, who has ever done the right thing without anyone watching and without anyone noticing and without any acknowledgement that the right thing was even being done. You are the reason the bond completes. You are the reason the library is still open. You are the reason the pack remembers. Subscribe. Hit that bell. Drop your location in the comments, because I need to know where in the world someone needed to hear that the moon goddess sees the third row. She always has. She always will. The next story starts tonight, and someone in it is sitting where you are sitting right now. Quiet. Doing the work. Waiting for the moon goddess to complete what she started. Don't miss it. See you there.